Good afternoon, everybody. This is the 15th, figuring it out, 15th webinar on what's new in TopSolid for 2022. My name is Bill Gentz. I am the Sales and Technical Director here at TopSolid USA. And like always, I am joined by Joe Hart, Technical Manager, and Mike K, the Wonder Nut. Alrighty, here we go. He's also our Sales Manager, but I like his new nickname better. So this webinar is going to be, let's make sure I'm broadcasting, here I am. It is going to be about methods and then some miscellaneous improvements. So let's hop into it. All right, so this first method improvement has to do with being able to select the material side on side milling operations, okay? Let me delete my operations here so you can see this live. So for those of you that have played around with methods, you'll like this one. If we look into the method itself and we go to the geometry button, you have the material side here. It's either given by the profiles, you can choose to invert it, you can have the result of a profile to machine, but then you have to insert an analysis of profiles up here. But at the end of the day, it just allows you to do methods for side milling operations like chamfering, side milling, contouring by plunge, corner rounding, things like that via method. This is, again, specifically tailored towards profiles. So I drag and drop that in to execute it, and we go OK. We can select the profile, hit go, and as you'll see, it applies all those operations automatically. So we did a side milling, we did a corner rounding, we did a chamfering, and we did contouring by plunge. Alrighty. All right, so the next one, I believe one of you guys asked me about in a previous webinar, having to do with PMI information, right? So now it is possible to have a manufacturing feature automatically grab and bring forward your GD&T information, your geometric and dimensional tolerances for the machinings, okay? Now, what can you do with them? Well, for example, if I do this analysis for end milling, and this is just to show you an example, it's not gonna actually do any machining. This is just to show you the analysis side that can be done. So we're gonna select the manufacturing feature, and it's going to automatically pull the tolerance from there. Now, I'm putting the pulled tolerance into a dialog box just so that you can see it's grabbing the information. So you can then use this information to affect your manufacturing process based on the surface finish requirements or based on the tolerance given, okay? Again, analysis for drillings, same concept. We select my drilling, you get your tolerance given on the diameter, okay? So again, the whole idea here is it's just to allow you to grab this information and then you can parse it and use it in your method however you want. All right, I see a question up there. If GD&T is not included on the imported models, is it possible to insert it and use it in an MF? I know it's kind of off topic, but was curious. Yes, you're always off topic, Mr. John. Yes, you can include the GD&T to the imported model yourself, and then the manufacturing feature will pull it when it sees it. I'm planning on doing a webinar later on this year showing more in depth what you can do with stuff like this anyway, so just stay tuned and we'll get around to it, or play on your own, but again, it is possible. Alrighty, so the next one is, let's scroll down on my list here, management of forced direction and operations. So methods now manage direction parameters available in operations. These used to prevent the creation of methods from an existing operation. 3 modifications are available, and I'm just going to bring my little cheat sheet over here because this is more important to see. Picking of an element now lets you pick an axis. Same thing for finding of an element. You can pick an axis. And then the new selection of a direction command in the picking submenu allows you to have the result of one of those analyses. Okay. From there, then, modification of direction in other parameters will open a dialog box, and you can then choose the results of your pickings. To give you an idea what that means, let's go here, and I'll just execute the method. So here you can see it's asking me to pick a face for my end milling. Cool, I'll pick that face. Now, a direction for the end milling, for the sweeping direction, right? So I can define a direction using an axis here if I want. I can just use a linear edge in the model. That's fine. Again, picking face to sweep again. This is for finishing probably. And then lead in direction for the sweeping vector. I'll say is that way. All right. Lead out direction for the sweeping vector. Perfect. And then off it goes and it builds said toolpath. And you can see it's now following those directions. Okay. So at the end of the day, you have the ability to play with directions. All right, another one that some of you will like is finding WCS in methods. Move on down here. So to find a WCS in methods, for example, I'll just go ahead and launch this. You can now specify an origin on the fly. So you can see I have two origins here. So maybe I want to use that origin. You can specify the frame to use as the reference. So maybe I want to use that frame. And then you can select the face to machine. Maybe I want that face. Okay, and at the end of the day, what you're going to wind up with is your toolpath following that referenced face and following that origin. Next, I don't care about this one because it's basically the same as the other. This next one is interesting, especially for people doing turning on B axes. Okay, so for example, I want to rough. Okay, so I'm going to turn rough with this. And now it's asking me what WCS solution I want to use. So I can use from my predefined lists here, right? Or I can use a specified one. Okay, so I can say, okay, maybe for that I have my B tilted at 45 already, okay, like so, and I want to use that angle. So that was something you couldn't do before inside of a method, now you can. Maybe that's it for the methods. If we go into miscellaneous stuff, so this one has to do with down here. This one has to do with an improvement to setup sheets. Okay, it'll require some training to understand how to do it, but just to show you what it does, if I go to my setup sheets here and I use this one, it's to have the driven point position automatically in the setup sheet. Okay, so you can see you have your driven point position here. We're at the center. Center, if it was tip, it would be down at the tip. But you now have the ability to define that to show up in your setup sheets. Plus, we talked about hyperlinks before and how they're used, right? So if you notice, I can hover on aspects of these setup sheets and it's telling me to control double click to follow the link, right? So if I hold control and I double click, it loads that specific setup sheet that it's pulling this information from. Okay, so for example, we'll go there, there's that setup sheet, and so on. Alrighty. All right, there has been a significant amount of work done on probing this year. So let's just get into it. So first of all, we tried to simplify how the selection process is done in probing. So if I come up here to additional and I go to probing and I come up and I pick, for example, rectangle. If I go to geometry, I can now start by selecting a face. It's going to launch directly into a little dialog like this, and then I can choose my faces. Okay? The other way to work in this case is to hit the plus sign, which will launch into it as well. So that's improvement number 1. Now, we go in here, let's make this thing maybe a little bit smaller so that you can see stuff. Next, and just so we're aware, let's just do another one really quick. Just so we're aware, they all have been improved this way. So a individual point is going to require you to pick 1 point per selection. Of course, you can do this on the fly. You can say point on surface, I want to be right there, perfect, and then select the point. Now you have a movement. Okay, if I select on an edge, it's going to add the point of the edge. Okay. If I go and do another probing where we are selecting, for example, a cylinder. Let's go ahead and set this to be a little bit smaller so we can see what's happening. Boom, boom, nice and simple. Okay? And you get the idea. Next, we have now, let's say, organized the probing to allow different modes of probing, and to make it easier in the post-processor to understand what it is you're trying to probe. What do I mean? Let's go to our probing modes, and let's go ahead and, I'm just going to rebuild once. Let's go ahead, look at one of these. So first of all, if I go into my settings here, you're going to see something up here called control point mode. From none to origin of the part to control report to presence of part. So these are all specifying different types of output into the post-processor. Yes, it will require an update of post-processors if you're using probing today. So you have to reach out to us and we'll have to work with you guys to update it to this new technology. Now, these are accessible here. They're also accessible in the quick settings balloon here. So you can change the mode all you want here, which is affected by what you get in here. So it's one and the same, okay? Beyond that, the selection is the selection. It's just how do you want to deal with the output of this program, okay? Next, for improvement to probing. All right, so some of you may have tooling probes, okay? So we have now the ability to analyze and probe on a sphere. So it's a new type here. You choose sphere, and then you can choose, as far as the cycle is concerned, how it's working, okay? Is it paraxial? Is it circular? Okay. With repeat measurement, without repeat measurement, how many points, orientation of the tool, you have a lot of good control here. One final thing to bring up here is this. So this is probably, again, a big improvement to probing. I'm going to turn off the machine for the moment. So notice something. This probing tool path, it might be hard to see just some colors, is actually probing to the stock, which is normal for solid stock. But if you noticed, we are on the faceted stock right now. So how are we probing on the faceted stock? When you're selecting geometries, you have a selection mode up here. So we're choosing the finish, and then a projection mode down here. We're staying on the finish, or we're projecting it out to the stock. And what the software will do is whatever points it winds up using for probing, it projects out perpendicular to the faceted stock to locate where that probing position should be. Okay? So again, a nice improvement to probing. Alrighty, moving on. We have a slight user interface change for you. I go into end milling, it doesn't matter which operation we go into. Okay. This button down here, the properties of the toolpath, used to bring out a pull-out icon bar. It's now been replaced with a full dialog box so that it's easier to understand what these options are. Okay, so you have your collision management section, your user set parameter section, your general section. Okay, do I want to update the stock, yes or no? Okay, so again, does F1 work properly? In regards to what? Oh, on these ops? I don't know. Let's find out. It seems yes is the answer. Okay, so that's it on the UI change. Move on down to workshop documents. And this one, I'm just going to kind of show you the end result again. The idea here is that, and I'll bring over my little cheat sheet. The idea here is you can now add component variables into your setup sheets. So for example, we have an assemble tool with 6 components. It's now possible to define properties for every tool component, access those properties so that you can have them in your setup sheet. Okay, for example, like this. And pardon my French, but this example was made by a French person, so there you go. Okay, next one. Projecting the stock to the initial state. Okay, so here we have some updated stock and what have you. And in our setup sheet, we want to create this view, or this view, so that we can get the dimensions of the stock prior to machining. Okay, so now in your setup sheet, let me go here. In my setup sheet now, you can grab the partial initial stock shape. Okay, as well, you can ask for, and this is the next improvement, a new checkbox has been added here, automatic dimensions of stock. So when you're creating your stock for any of these basic types of stock, you can have these dimensions show up in your setup sheet as well. Okay? Perfect. All right, 11.10. Oh yeah, let's go into this one. So it's now possible to show inherited annotations from the CAD or NC part setup. You can project your stock with initial dimensions or workshop documents as well. So we should be able to show annotations. And there we go. Boom. So it's just part of the right-click menu, but you can show the stock sizes. You can show any geometric tolerancing that you had added to this as well, so that you can at least see it while you're here in CAM. And then you can always right-click and hide the annotations. Perfect. This one I'm not going to show live, but we'll talk about it. I don't know that any of you have started working with work documents yet. Again, this is something we're going to dig into later this year via some webinars. A work document lets you capture a specific workflow. For example, after you have it automatically create the machinings for all of your machinable features, you want it to now generate the NC code for you. Before you had to generate the NC code manually, now you can generate the NC code automatically. Okay, that's that one. Like I said, we'll get more into detail on that later this year. The other thing you can do with work documents is you can now name the CAM files using the work documents. So you can set up a rule for how you want to name them. All right, next one. This one I will show you because it's fun. We wanted to make working with environments a little simpler. So if you notice down here where we can show or hide the stock, the finish, the what have you, you can also show or hide now your environment objects with a quick icon. Again, it's just there to help keep things running smoothly for you. Ready. Next one. All right, so in simulation, for verification purposes, in the Incidents tab, it's now possible to specify the distance under which the tool and environment will be considered as colliding. So let me go into Verify, into your settings, and under Incidents here, this is for animation mode only, but now you can set a security distance here. So we're not going to consider that it's a collision unless it's within 0.1 millimeters, for example. Okay? Or 0.001 or something like that. It's just an additional security distance for checking for collisions. All right, and the last one, let's see. I'm going to show it this way because it's more about understanding what's going to happen. So the compare and replace management, the wizard now is able to interrupt its process to let the user manage invalidities. So when the compare and replace command is interrupted with an invalidity found due to the part replacement, when clicking OK, the part is open in the window. TopSolid requires the user to repair the invalidity. And then once it's corrected, you will have access to a new command right here, resume replace wizard. And then it allows you to continue going back and continue working on the replacement. Okay? Okie dokie. So I believe that is it for this session. We have one more session following, okay, where we're going to talk about some new cam features. Does anyone have any questions from things I went over in this session? Looks like there were some thrown out there, and it looks like they were answered dynamically. If no one else has any other questions, then we'll see you at the last webinar at 3 o'clock. Have a good afternoon.